We move closer to the altar, and we see, if we look hard enough, we see these little dramatic scenes on the wall, which remind us that this is also a place of sorrows. The Stations of the Cross have an interesting history, actually. They're not just to remind us of the horror of Golgotha or of the crucifixion, but also to remind us that of what the Franciscans endured in saving Christendom and the holy sites of Jerusalem from being totally taken over by Islam. Around the 12th century, the Muslims finally conquered the Christians and seized the Holy Land. And eventually, the only people that they would let in were the Franciscans, believe it or believe it not, to maintain the holy sites of Christianity, which they still do to this day, as a matter of fact. Also interesting that St. Francis was the first person to receive the stigmata. So despite all the associations with lambs and animals and nature, St. Francis is most closely associated with the cross, actually. I mean, the most visible thing, the most tangible thing that happened to him was he bore the first saint, the first person in the history of Christianity to bear the stigmata, which has special relevance for this because they are now protectors. His priestly confreres are protectors of the Golgotha and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which of course lies over the tomb of Jesus. Up to a certain point, the Franciscans, and up to quite recently, actually, only in the 19th century, the Franciscans were the only ones permitted to put up Stations of a Cross in the church, in any church. So symbolic was their association with the Holy Land and with the Passion of Christ, and of course their founder being a bearer of the holy wounds. They were the only ones who were allowed to come when the church wanted Stations of the Cross to put them up. That was dispensed with in the 19th century for all sorts of reasons. Obviously, Franciscans are hard to come by when you're looking for them in a hurry. Now, of course, each church bears them. But it's interesting that it really does take us back right to the Holy Land. They're not just mere representations of the Passion, which of course are central to the story that happens in this place and to the history that we share here, and to where we're going, to the personal history of the host in whose house we are. It is actually bringing us back to the dramatic events of lasting 1,000 years, 1,200 years, that brought us to the current state that we're in the Holy Land. So they are really physical, concrete reminders of what went on there. And they were brought out by the whole idea was brought out by the Franciscan order to give us a sense that every day when we come here, traveling up the nave of the church, we take the Via della Rosa, the way of the cross. That we are coming to meet someone who has had a history, and a very real history at that. It's not just something absent. It's something that's someone who's very present and who lived on this earth and who shared all of these things and experienced water, fire, wine, etc. Remember the two great miracles: the first miracle, the last miracle, wine. The marriage feast of Cana. I had a seminarian when I was teaching him, and he'd sit before me one day, and he was very pompous and very precious about himself. And I was teaching them Greek philosophy, and so they're in with all the NUI students in the theatre. And at one point, he said, I was discussing, we were talking about virtue. The Greeks talked a lot about virtue and how human beings are naturally virtuous. You could be, and you would have to be virtuous if you wanted to flourish as a human being. So said Aristotle, and he was right, actually. But however, and that meant moderation. Virtue is being moderate in everything. St. Benedict said the same. Moderation in all things. St. Paul said the same. Little wine is good for the stomach, but everything in sweet moderation. So I was talking about this, and I was saying that everything done to moderation is good for you. Everything. Hitting the mean, as Aristotle, the midpoint, he called it. Not too much, not too little. Too much, too little, and of course we live in a world of extremes. You're either too fat or you're too skinny, or you're too this, you're too that. Everybody's going to extremes. You just can't get, the middle ground is gone. However, he says, I'm out of the blue. You don't interrupt a lecturer when he's speaking, but out of the blue, he banged his head. And of course, he was very passionate about this. I am the drinkers. I can't bear drinkers. Drinking is no place for me and no place in this place and for our religion and blah, blah, blah. I said, are you aware, I said, that Christ drank and his apostles drank very much. They couldn't keep them awake at a vital moment in his life. And of course, if you trace the history of how much people drank at meals in those days, I tell you, it leaves this Irish culture in the halfpenny place. We're only trotting way behind. But I said the first and the last miracles were central to them was wine. I said, Christ comes in the form of wine. It had never struck him. He'd been in the place 3 years and that had never struck him. So this person drank, he lived, he bled, he cried, and so on and so forth. And these are tangible reminders of that last great dramatic journey. Not a journey of horror, a journey of love. An example of how we give ourselves totally by emptying ourselves. It's all about emptying. Remember, the host empties him or herself. She gives. He's giving from the moment we walk into his house, but we give. We spend money. We prepare the table. We divest ourselves of our own selfish needs and intentions for one night so that others can enjoy themselves. And this is from the moment he set off with that object on his back, he was giving. Whether it be the luck to his mother, whether it be giving his face to Saint Veronica, whether it be the look of love he gave Simon, whether it be the pardon he gave the thief, whether it be giving his mother away to the apostle, whatever it was, giving himself into his Father's hands, giving. And a great example of how a Christian should live, a real Christian, constantly earning your poverty of spirit. Not giving away everything that you have, but your poverty of spirit, not being possessed by your possessions. And that is a great dramatic, and the Franciscans show us how that is. They do it, to an extreme degree, or they did at least, but at least it was there as a tangible reminder of what you need to strive for. And then those stations of the cross that are just not there for reminder's sake. They are there to remind us of that this place still exists. And if you want to walk the way of the cross, you don't have to go to the Holy Land. You don't have to visit the Franciscans. You merely take a tour of the heart and divest yourself of